So, morning. We're running on weapons grade coffee. Hi there, welcome to another episode of Phase Drive Vlogs. Today we're talking about sample rate and bit depth. So before we start, just a quick reminder, if you haven't already, then please consider subscribing. We release a weekly video on various topics such as music production, video production, photographic stuff, kit, gear reviews, all sorts of stuff. So get those regular updates and interesting content, we hope. So, sample rates. This is a bit of a potentially contentious one. It does seem to generate quite a lot of strong opinion and even some vitriol when it's discussed online. So I'm not going to go into technical detail. I'm just going to go through how we arrived at the sample rate we chose, which we've recently changed, and just talk a bit about it generally. So hopefully not too contentious. But I think, in my view, is there's no right or wrong answer. It's up to you what you pick, and if you think a higher sample rate is going to work, then it doesn't matter what anyone else says. That's your choice. That's what you stick with. And similarly, if you want to record everything at CD quality, fine, or lower, potentially. So we started looking at this a few weeks back. We were recording, I think, at 48 kilohertz, 24-bit. At the time, and started doing a few trials and tests amongst the team with 96 kilohertz 32-bit, and the general opinion was the higher sample rate produced better results. So that's what we've now adopted as our kind of de facto sample rate standard for projects, for Cubase projects. I think it's important to distinguish between what you run a project at versus what you export to. It can be two different things, but obviously you can export to lower sample rates if you're running at a high sample rate. So there's a couple of considerations in that decision. One was audio quality, which I think is the main contentious point. The other was storage space. How much storage space the bigger audio files we're going to take up. Doesn't make a massive great difference on the project file size, but it makes a big difference on the audio, both the audio you record and the audio you export. And the third thing was processing power. Higher sample rates require more processing power. So on this system, if we're running a typical project with 8 to 12 plugins, virtual instruments, and say 30 to 40 EQ or compression inserts or effects inserts and sends, then it's usually running about halfway up the performance meter. Maybe sort of 2/3 depending, and that's at 96 kilohertz 32-bit depth. If we run it at 48 kilohertz and 24-bit depth, it tends to be about half of that, and for CD quality, again, a little bit less. So it does use up a lot more processing power, but we're well within our limits on that. So we've got plenty of storage space, so we're not really worried about storage space. So we decided to go with that. So if you are limited on storage space or processing power, then you might need to pick a lower sample rate and bit depth. Does that make a massive amount of difference? Well, sometimes I can hear the difference, sometimes I can't, to be honest. And I think it does depend on the music, the instruments being used, the way it's mixed or mastered, how you're feeling on the day, how tired your ears are. If you've been, mixing and mastering all day, your ears are going to be pretty tired, so you probably won't pick up any differences. And the differences are fairly subtle and marginal most of the time. So it could be argued it's not really worth the extra space. But the other consideration is that some clients, and increasingly more clients, are expecting higher resolution audio to be delivered rather than sort of lower sample rates and bit depths. So, and that trend is likely to keep going up. So there's an element of future-proofing in the decision to go with higher sample rates. I don't think it's essential in terms of audio quality. It's definitely a game of diminishing returns. So you could potentially go higher than 96 kilohertz. and Cubase itself runs in the background at 64-bit depth. And we did try 64-bit depth, but it didn't make a massive amount of difference in terms of quality, and the file sizes were huge. So we decided not to go down that route. But yeah, you could go higher than 96 kilohertz. Why didn't we? Well, a lot of plugins that we use don't operate above 96 kilohertz. That's their kind of ceiling sample rate. A lot of the wave stuff we use, for example. So we decided 96 kilohertz was plenty. The debate on sample rates and the kind of different views and opinions do remind me a bit of a demo I was lucky enough to attend a few years back now, of what was then a top CD player by a company called Lynn Hi-Fi up in Glasgow. They do some fairly good quality stuff and pretty high-end stuff as well. And they were blind testing it against their top-of-the-range vinyl deck called the Lynn Sondek. So at the time, and this was a few years back, I think the Lynn CD12, as it was about 12 grand. So it wasn't a cheap bit of kit, fairly serious bit of kit. And even now they go for quite a few, they go for 3 to 6 grand second hand. So they're not cheap bits of kit. And the Lynn Sondek version that they were running, which is quite upgradable from down here to right up there, was I think about just 9 grams worth from memory. And I consistently preferred the vinyl deck. Don't forget, it was a blind test. I didn't know which was playing. The vinyl had a smoother kind of sound. It had a more sort of deeper and wider sound stage. It just sounded more natural, seemed to flow more. Whereas the CD was a bit more kind of clinical and a bit more precise. And it's horses for courses. It's down to your own personal preference. But I think the pursuit of higher sample rates is trying to get digital back to that kind of analog kind of sound and the analog feel. So I kind of understand why people pursue it. Not, like I say, not everyone agrees with it, but I kind of get it. And there is a kind of constant pursuit for analogness in audio, which is sometimes makes me laugh, but I can understand why, because analog sources are pretty amazing and you get a really good one. So that's why we kind of decided to go with the sample rates we have. We'd be very interested to hear what you decided on and why you decided and how you came to that decision and your views. Keep it nice, because like I say, there's no right or wrong. But yeah, that's where we got to on sample rates, and we'll keep looking at it. We'll keep looking at technology and how it's progressing, and how things are, what the trends are, and keep reassessing that, because I think it's not something that's going to stand still. It's going to keep developing. So yeah, that's it from us. A short one today. Coming up, we've got a few other interesting vlogs. We've got some new IR tests. We're going back into the world of IRs and amp sims. So look out for those. Keep an eye on the channel, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks for your time.